Let's start today talking about taxes and more specifically what happens next year or at the end of next year, depending on who wins the November election. Many of you wrote to me over the last week regarding some of the different tax proposals that are now being put forward. And the term proposal is a little bit generous when it comes to some of the ideas that are out there. But in a lot of ways, 2025 is going to be the year of the future of taxes. Now, why do I say that? Why does it have to be the case that 2025 will be consequential as far as taxes are concerned? Isn't it possible that whoever wins in November just won't do anything about taxes in 2025? And it's not really possible. And the reason why is that a lot of what was in the Trump tax plan of 2017 sunsets or expires at the end of 2025, December 31st, 2025. A whole bunch of elements expire. And so in particular, because of that, and because Donald Trump could be back in office and could extend or even build on some of those things versus allowing them to expire if that's what Joe Biden wants to do and coming up with a new framework, 2025 is going to be massively controversial in terms of the future of taxes. And realistically, in ways, in the same way that Trump's 2017 tax plan is in effect through the end of 2025, 8 years later, what happens next year with taxes will be impactful to the tax code well beyond the next presidential term. So it will affect what happens under future presidents. No matter whether it's Trump or Biden's second term, we will have tax consequences based on 2025's president that will go beyond the next presidential term. Now, let's talk through some of the different things that may happen. I've spoken before about QBID. That's the Qualified Business Income Deduction, as well as the SALT limit, SALT being state and local taxes. You don't need to understand each of these elements deeply to have a general understanding of what we're talking about here. QBID, the Qualified Business Income Deduction, is a sort of haircut of up to 20% for people in certain types of businesses. That was added under the Trump tax plan, while on the other hand, there was a limit placed on how much in state and local taxes you could deduct. The effect of this was it was beneficial for many business owners, and it was not good for many of the people who live in higher estate tax states like New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, California. If Biden wins, almost certainly Trump's QBID goes away, and then the SALT limit also goes away unless it's extended. And it's not completely clear yet what Joe Biden plans to do about that. You also may recall that Donald Trump lowered the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%. That was technically made permanent, but almost certainly if Biden wins and then is responsible for a new tax framework, that corporate tax rate level will go up. And Biden has talked about 28%. Also important is that if Joe Biden wins, people like Elizabeth Warren will probably get a voice. Elizabeth Warren is one of the most left-wing senators in the U.S. Senate. I know many people in my audience hate it when I say that. She's a neo-lib. She's a centrist. No, if you go by voting record and stated political positions, I believe that the only senator to the left of Elizabeth Warren is Bernie Sanders. And Elizabeth Warren has many ideas. She wants new taxes for corporations. She wants new taxes for billionaires. And realistically, if President Biden is reelected, Elizabeth Warren will, at least to some degree, have his ear, and some of her ideas may be integrated into what Joe Biden ultimately proposes. Now, Joe Biden has also discussed some of his ideas for taxes for 2025 if he wins. His general framework is he wants to renew the elements of Trump's 2017 taxes that help lower the tax burden on those earning under $400,000 a year, but he plans to allow the expiration of those that lower the tax burden of individuals earning or households earning over $400,000 a year. As I mentioned, Biden's budget includes a 28% tax on corporations. That's lower than where it was before Trump, which was 35%, but it's higher than the 21% that we have right now. Trump would keep all of those things that he put in place in 2017, and he's floated a whole bunch of other ideas. Now, it's important to mention that Trump floats different ideas depending on who he's speaking to. He had this closed door meeting with a bunch of CEOs. That's where he seemed confused. And a lot of the CEOs were stunned at Trump's inability to focus on anything and just randomly jumping from anecdote to anecdote. But in that meeting, to the extent that Trump has any idea what he was talking about, he was talking about bringing down the corporate tax rate even more from 21 to 20%, a small change, but continued reduction in the corporate tax rate. Now, that morning, before speaking to the CEOs, Trump spoke to House Republicans. And with House Republicans, he floated a completely different idea, which is let's get rid of the entire U.S. income tax system and just put tariffs on foreign goods and that's it, which makes no mathematical sense. It makes no moral sense. It makes no political sense. It's a really whacked idea. But the point here is Trump's proposing a lot of different things depending on who he's talking to. And then over the last month, Trump has sort of signaled support for a number of different corporate tax rates. Even though he told the CEOs he would push it down from 21 to 20%, he also has said, what about 15% as a corporate tax rate? We don't really know what he wants, and it kind of remains a mystery because he'll say 12 different things to 10 different audiences. Needless to say, we talk about Supreme Court consequences to this election, massively consequential. Option one, if Biden wins, is very likely two conservative justices, Alito and Clarence Thomas, are replaced with Biden picks. That's a great thing. On the other hand, if Trump wins, Alito and Clarence Thomas retire with the safety and knowledge that Trump will replace them. And then by the end of Trump's next term, we end up with 5 of the 9 Supreme Court justices having been selected by Donald Trump. So massive Supreme Court consequences, massive consequences as far as taxes are concerned. I don't really expect deep tax policy discussion at next week's debate. Most people will be watching to see whether either candidate soils themselves or forgets how to speak. That's really the overarching story about next week's debate. But it's at least conceivably possible that we'll get some discussion about tax policy next week, and that'll be interesting to see. It is time to start thinking like voters and to make sure that kids understand the importance of voting, how it works, registering, ballot initiatives, because so many kids just have no idea. That's why I wrote the new children's book, Think Like a Voter. I can think of no better time and no more important group of folks to try to reach. The book is now available at davidpakman.com/book, where, by the way, you can get the first 2 books in the series as well. Think Like a Detective and Think Like a Scientist. Really important stuff. Donate them to local libraries, classrooms, read them with the kids. davidpakman.com/book.